Hey, good Sunday afternoon, everybody. I'm meteorologist Joe Fitzwater. Got an update on some of the storms that are going to be making their way through the region here this afternoon. We'll give everybody just a quick second to hop on here. And again, appreciate everybody that has been tuning in here this afternoon. Hopefully you've had a wonderful weekend. Weather-wise, hasn't been maybe the most ideal, but we are going to be seeing some improving conditions. Doesn't look like we have a lot right now, but I do think that's going to be changing over the next hour or two. So we're going to kind of split this Facebook Live up into two parts here. Basically, the first half we'll talk about kind of the generals as far as what we can expect, and then we'll take the second half of this Facebook Live and kind of dive deeper down into some of the reasons why we may or may not see some storms across the region. So again, hopefully you've had a wonderful Sunday. Weather-wise, hasn't been the most fantastic weekend for weather, but we are going to be seeing some improving conditions here as we head toward this evening and then into Monday. So let's take a look outside right now. And this is your Viper real-time radar. And we don't have a lot of activity showing up just yet. We had some rain showers this morning. We do have a couple of storms that have been nearby in the Huntington area. I know they've got some baseball games, softball going on over in the Jewel City. They just had a decent little rain shower that rolled through, and it's pretty quiet for now back to the west. And you might think it's kind of dry across most of the region, and you'd be right. We have a few showers across parts of southern West Virginia that have moved out of eastern Kentucky. But I'm going to switch radar sides and go back into parts of eastern Kentucky, and this is what I'm keeping an eye on. So this is actually with the cold front itself. I'm going to zoom out just a bit. We've got a cold front that's draped right about here, and it's going to work its way down to the south and to the east here as we progress through this afternoon. And I do think we're going to have more storms that form out along ahead of that cold front here as we head toward later on this afternoon. So I think once you get behind the front, so this area across central Kentucky, so the Lexington area, the Louisville area, back toward parts of Indiana, back toward parts of Ohio, western Ohio, these areas are already in the clear. But I think farther to the east here, we could still see a few storms pop up here as we head into this afternoon. And if you look, we'll take a look at some of the satellite imagery here in a minute. We're starting to see a few breaks in the clouds, and I think that's going to help develop some of these storms here as we head toward later in the day. But again, we do have one decent little cell just to the east of the London area in eastern Kentucky. This is along the cold front itself that's going to slide itself down to the south and east here as we head toward later today. Now, our predictor is not showing a lot of activity. I do think it's actually underplaying things just a bit here as we head into the afternoon. It's not taking into account a lot of sunshine, and we are seeing some peaks of sun in parts of the region, and that's why I think we're going to see a few storms here as we head toward later this afternoon. But as we go toward 1 and 2 o'clock, here we go with a few storms here that have popped up. There's one predictor hinting at possibly in parts of Roane and Clay County, so we'll keep an eye on that. And any of these storms that do pop up could produce some brief damaging wind gusts as well as some small hail here as we head to the afternoon. But that's 2 o'clock. Then we get toward 3 o'clock and the main activity starts to shift its way over to the east here. And this cold front starts to really approach our region. Again, once the cold front passes through, you're in the clear. So I think by 5, 6, 7 o'clock, we're going to really see some improving conditions, especially across southern Ohio, northeastern parts of Kentucky, western parts of West Virginia. In fact, it should be a pretty decent sunset dinner time period in those areas. And then once this storm system scoots off to the east, we're going to be looking at a beautiful Monday here across the area. So the Storm Prediction Center has still issued a 1 out of 5. It did briefly go up to a 2 out of 5 for today back early this morning. They have since dropped that back to a 1 out of 5. I think that's probably a good move, because, again, we're not looking at widespread severe weather. I want to make that very clear. No widespread severe weather expected here this afternoon, but 1 or 2 storms could be on the stronger side, again, here as we head toward later today. So that 1 out of 5, that is primarily a damaging wind risk as well as a hail risk. I want to emphasize we're not really expecting large hail, but small hail will certainly be possible with some of these storms, and we'll take a look at that, at why on that here when we get into some of the more in-depth discussion in just a bit, a little more of the sciencey side of things here in the next few minutes. But again, a damaging wind gust threat still there. Let's take a brighter or a wider look, I should say, at the situation that we've got here weather-wise. And again, Basically, we're in the what I call the unstable sector of the storm system, a pretty common term. We're getting warm, moist air out behind a warm front that lifted up to the north overnight last night. We have a cold front that's dividing cooler air back to the west with that warm and humid air to the east. And that's where we're going to find those storms that I think are going to fire up here along this cold front. So we're going to change some products here. I'm going to use a different product here to talk about or to show some of the satellite imagery. And that is going to kind of start to paint the picture on what we can expect here as we head toward later today. So here's a look at the current high-resolution satellite imagery. Now you're going to notice here we don't have, I'm going to change the font really quick so we can make this a little bit easier to see. So give me 1 second. But you're going to notice that we don't have a ton of sunshine here across parts of the region, but where you see the black, that's where we are seeing some sun beginning to bust through here, and it is in spots here on the satellite. Notice back to the west across Cincinnati, back toward the Elizabethtown area, in west central parts of Kentucky, southern parts of Indiana, back toward parts of Illinois, all the black. That means that we've got a lot of sunshine back here, and this kind of helps paint that picture on where the front is. It's draped right here, and if you notice on satellite, we're seeing these cloud tops showing up across parts of eastern Kentucky. You can see a little bit right in there. We see another one there over toward the London area. And then we're starting to see some clouds beginning to bubble up near Moorhead. And I think that's where we're going to start to see those storms fire up here. And you can kind of see that here as we put the radar on top of it, that these storms are firing up where those clouds are. So that means we could start to see a storm or two pop up in the Moorhead area over the next half hour to an hour. And again, basically I expect a line of scattered showers and thunderstorms to form here over the next couple of hours, and then they'll push their way over to the east. We can look at a few parameters that can kind of help gauge the severity of what these storms are going to be working with, one of which is a look at energy. So basically what we're looking at here is the amount of energy that's available for some of these storms to work with. And basically once you get above the yellow level, that's where you start to work with a good bit of energy. And this is suggesting that we do have a fair bit here, especially across parts of eastern Kentucky, across parts of northeastern Kentucky and the southern Ohio, and that's just to the west of where that cold front is. So these storms do have some energy to work with. And we can look at some other parameters such as the supercell composite, which these are some pretty impressive numbers that we're seeing here in the values of 3 to 4. That would indicate that we do have a decent setup for some strong storms here if we could get those storms going. It's kind of a big if here. And the problem is we have what we call a cap in place. So basically what happens when we have a cap, imagine a storm trying to grow vertically, but there being something, a lid above those storms to where the clouds get so far up, and then they kind of just spread out. They don't continue to rise. And that's kind of what we've got right now, indicated by the blues here across parts of West Virginia. We call that a lid here across the area, and that's going to help prevent those storms for now. But if we get a little bit of sunshine, that will help break that cap, and we don't have a cap across parts of eastern Kentucky. Again, I'll overlay the radar, and you can see those storms are working in an area that is what we call uncapped. However, that little cell that's near the Huntington area is moving through an area that is capped, and so that cell is weakening quite a bit. A lot of these cells have weakened as they've made their way into the Kanawha Valley. So that's another way that we can look at things. We can also look at the tornado product. It's pretty low, but it's not zero. So there's a lot of wind shear in the atmosphere today, a lot of wind energy, and that means some of we do get a little bit of changing of wind direction with height. I'm not really that concerned about a tornado risk here for today, but nonetheless, the risk is not completely zero. I still think that damaging wind risk, as well as the potential for some hail, is the most probable scenarios here as far as some strong storms as we head into this afternoon. I want to talk really quickly. This is a forecast sounding from one of the high resolution models. Let me get that to pop up here. And this is the reason that we've got a risk for hail, in my opinion. I'm going to try and zoom in on this just a little bit. That might be a little too much. Let me see if there's a way that I can zoom in maybe halfway. That's decent. Okay, so basically what we've got going on in the atmosphere today is a lot of dry air. So what that does is it makes it a little bit easier for hailstones to develop. And we'll kind of briefly talk about this and then go back to more generalized stuff, but I wanted to kind of explain the forecast here for today. But basically, in the mid-levels, we have some very dry air, several thousand feet above the ground from us. And what this enables storms to do is it enables gravity to work a little less favorably on bringing ice that builds up in this dry air down to the surface. So, in essence, because the air is drier, it's not as heavy, and so the particles that freeze when we start to see hail production, those ice forming in these updrafts, gravity doesn't bring them down as quickly. So that gives that ice a chance to kind of build up a bit in the storms itself before finally being heavy enough to drop back down to the surface. But with the freezing level, the point at which things freeze, with things being with that freezing level being pretty close to the surface, we're going to see likely some small hailstones with some of the elevated storms that we see later on today. So that's a little bit of a nerdier side of things on why I think we're going to be seeing more in the way of a hailstone threat than anything else here this afternoon. But again, we'll go back now and generalize things before we wrap things up. And then I'll answer a couple of questions that you guys have posted on here. Actually, we'll check a few comments first, and then we'll wrap things up. But again, I appreciate everybody that has been tuning in. Let's see, how about Mingo County, Cabell County? Again, a few scattered showers and storms possible here as we head toward later on this afternoon. But very widely scattered. A lot of dry time here for today. Kelly says, so I'm assuming my umbrella is necessary the rest of the day. Wouldn't be a bad idea to have it with you here as we head into the afternoon. But again, there's going to be a lot of dry time, so we've got that going for us. Russell says, lightning and thunder. Let us know where you're watching from. Again, a lot of folks commenting their location. I appreciate you guys letting us know because, we like to see where people are watching from for the sake of, just seeing where the impacts are going to be expected. We're happy to help you out. And if you do have any other questions, you can message me on my Facebook page at Joe Fitzwater, meteorologist. Okay, so let's wrap things up here again. As we head through this afternoon, we're going to see a couple of scattered showers and thunderstorms pop up. Some of those storms could be on the strong to severe side with damaging wind gusts as well as some small hail being the main probabilities here as far as which severe storm threat that we could be seeing. Not really expecting much in the way of a tornado threat, but that threat technically is not zero, so again, we'll keep an eye on that. By 4, 5, 6 o'clock, though, this cold front will slide through the area, and as it does so, that's going to bring in so much drier air into the region, and so we won't have to worry about that risk for strong storms once we get toward around that dinner time period. And this evening is looking pretty nice across the region, and Monday is looking good as well. However, we are going to be looking at more chances for rain over the coming days, and again, the Storm Prediction Center has issued a 1 out of 5 risk for severe weather for this afternoon into the mid-afternoon. I think by the evening hours, this threat will be over. So if we do have any major watches or warnings that are issued, we'll be sure to let you know. But for now, we don't have any. We're just tracking some storms that are trying to build across parts of eastern Kentucky with that cold front that's scooting through. And we'll continue to stay on top of things. But for now, I'm meteorologist Joe Fitzwater in the Storm Tracker 13 Weather Lab. I hope you have a wonderful Sunday afternoon.